Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome to another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movies and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there, and I am indeed doing well and have been for the past week. And I want to mention this right at the beginning of this episode because I've had some conversations with some friends and family and indeed a few people in this community as well about something that's been going on in my personal life over the past few months. And this ramble is a bit of a milestone as well in kind of relation to that, because a week ago, I was officially diagnosed with inattentive type ADHD, which might not be a surprise for those of you who are familiar with my output, but there you go. And I have also been prescribed this, which is Elvance. It is a prescription medication. It's actually a controlled drug here in the UK. It's a mild stimulant, and indeed it is to manage the symptoms of inattentive ADHD. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect my ability to ramble. I think it has actually made a really big difference in my day-to-day life and in my day job and stuff, difference to my focus and my attention and stuff like that, feeling much more present in the moment and that kind of thing. And I wanted to mention it because, like I said, I've had some conversations off the back of that I think of some other people in my life have actually found quite useful. They've had thoughts and feelings about themselves for a long time now, as I did for years. And, it's they kind of started to investigate this and perhaps ask some questions and perhaps even start to embark upon that journey themselves. Now, this is something that I might make a video about at some point. I know it's not on topic for the other stuff that I do, but like I say, I think it is quite helpful to talk about this and it might be quite useful for some people. So yeah, that's that. Be on the lookout for any kind of differences in my demeanour, in my attention, in my delivery of this ramble. I have no idea how it's going to go, but I certainly feel quite a bit different. Anyway, let's talk about something that is on topic now, and that is something that I have acquired this week. So every week in Reese Rambles, I give a shout out to my Doom shrine behind me. I usually have one or two Doom-related stories. Of course, greatest game of all time. But the shrine itself hasn't had much attention for quite a while now, but that has changed this week because I have picked up something new, and here it is. I will describe this for the benefit of my audio listeners. This is a plastic toy chainsaw that has been signed by John Romero. Of course, John Romero and John Carmack, the two founders of id Software, who created all those great games, Commander Keen, Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and all the rest of them. And if you go to his website, romerogames.com, he sells quite a lot of tat, Doom-related tat, that he signs. Evidently makes quite a bit of money on the side, selling stuff to collectors like me. But I saw this and I just couldn't resist it. I think it was €15 plus shipping. So yeah, it's only very thin. It's not very substantial at all. But what a cool thing to have for the Doom Shrine. And of course, signed by the great man himself, as per some of the other stuff that I've got here that I bought from his glorious website of tat. Anyway, that's that. Not really a story. So I guess we'll get into the actual stories for this week. My next story, in a roundabout kind of way, actually follows on rather neatly from the Doom talk, because usually every week here on Reese Rambles, I end up talking about a port of Doom to some weird and wonderful new piece of hardware upon which it was never intended to be run. We're talking about stuff like satellites in one story that I did, stuff like digital cameras and photo printers, and someone even ported Doom to a pregnancy test at one point, quite famously. So yeah, it's kind of been a bit of a challenge over the years that has always fascinated the Doom community. But in this case, it's not Doom. It's one of the other greatest games of the 90s, and indeed greatest games of all time, and another personal favourite of mine, being ported to an unusual piece of hardware where you might not expect to see it running. So without further ado, let's head over to tomshardware.com and this story by Luke James. The headline here: developer gets Half-Life running at 30 FPS on a Nokia N95, or indeed Nokia if you are American, but I'm going to say Nokia because that's what we say in the UK. Anyway, this proves that 2007 phones can just about match 1998 PCs. The 1998 shooter now runs on Symbian hardware with Bluetooth mouse and keyboard support added. So before we go into the story, there is a link to a video of this running over on X, on Twitter. So I'm going to hit play on this just to give you some context and to show you what this looks like running, because It's very impressive indeed. As mentioned, this runs at 30 FPS, and we can see the developer here. They've got a Bluetooth mouse hooked up to the phone, using the D-pad built into the phone, although this does apparently also support keyboards, and wandering around the reception area in Black Mesa, the kind of opening scenes of Half-Life. Absolutely super silky smooth. There is some damage to the screen, unfortunately, so can't quite see what's going on perfectly, but it's perfectly fine to demonstrate the concept. And it looks great. It runs absolutely great. Better than it ran on some of our PCs back in the day, I would hazard to say. So yeah, that's the game actually running. And now we're going to find out a bit more about the backstory behind it. So if we head back over to Tom's Hardware, Argentine developer. That's right, I am in the top 15 tech podcasts in Argentina. Thank you, people of Argentina, for your support. I did talk about that last week. I wonder if he's a Rambler. Do get in touch. Anyway, Argentine developer Dante Leoncini has gotten the original Half-Life running at 30 FPS on a Nokia N95, the Symbian slider phone that launched in 2007, and has added mouse and keyboard support, he said in a post on X this week. Leoncini says that while some slowdowns remain, he has pinned down the cause and is working on a fix. The latest step in a series of efforts to run heavyweight software on the dual-core 332 MHz handset. Half-Life shipped in 1998, needing a 133 MHz Pentium and 24 meg of RAM at minimum. Specs the N95 clears on paper. And it mentions that to date, Leoncini has managed to run Quake 3, Crash Bandicoot, and emulate Sega, ScumVM, and NES on the handset. Of course, I should mention the N95 is one of those interesting kind of products that came out around the same time that the iPhone was launched. Of course, that was also 2007. That transitionary period between feature phones and kind of the full-blown smartphones that we have today, when people were doing really interesting stuff with like Java-based apps and internet-based stuff, sowing the seeds of what would become the modern smartphone. And the N95 has always had a really kind of passionate homebrew following as well. It's a very powerful platform. So no surprise that all of these games are kind of up and running on this system, but always really cool to see. And to see them running this well as well. So just to give a bit of background on the N95 itself as a platform. And before I just continue with this story, the other thing I wanted to point out is that it mentions here that the original Half-Life runs on a 133 MHz Pentium with 24 meg of RAM. And I know that Valve have always been really good at building engines that scale really well. Of course, original Half-Life was kind of a modified version of the Quake 2 engine. But I'm not sure that running it on a 133 MHz Pentium would be a very pleasant experience. I'm sure it's probably playable by the standards of the time. But yeah, this 300 megahertz phone is kind of much closer to kind of the minimum system that you'd want to run it on. I think I had an Athlon 650 at the time, or at least we had one as a family PC. Probably 64 meg of RAM. I think that was kind of what we were running it on, and that was a pretty good experience. But that's by the by, bit of historical context. So the N95, bit of information on the hardware, pairs a 332 MHz Texas Instruments OMAP 2420, a dual-core part built around the ARM11 design, with a PowerVR MBX 3D accelerator, 64 meg of RAM, and a 240 by 320 display, all under Symbian OS 9.2 and S60 3rd edition. An 8GB storage variant released later in 2007 doubled the memory to 128 megabytes. Very impressive specs for a phone in 2007. It's no surprise that the N95 has the following that it does. So yeah, of course, they can't emulate the PC version on this phone because it is indeed an ARM processor running its own Symbian operating system. So this is a port. He has actually taken the original source code and ported it rather than emulating it. And so the limiting factor on the Quake 3 port that the developer worked on previously was the CPU. And apparently troubleshooting that has helped him to identify some of the issues with this new Half-Life port. Anyway, back to the author's own words, rather than paraphrasing. Ports of Half-Life to unusual platforms generally lean on Zash 3D. That's Zash, or is it Xash? Starts with an X. An open source engine compatible with Valve's Gold Source that's been built for Android, the Raspberry Pi, and the Meta Quest. Whether Leoncini's N95 version uses it isn't confirmed, however. A bit more information about the Quake 3 ports and stuff like that, of course you can go and read about if you want to follow the link down in the description. But there you go. The crux of the story is that there is now a port of Half-Life to the Nokia N95. It is not publicly available yet from what I've seen, but hopefully it will be made available at some point in the future for those of you out there in the N95 world who might be interested in giving this a try. But an absolutely fascinating technical achievement as well, of course. My hat is off to you, Dante Leoncini. Wonderful, wonderful work, and great to talk about and think about one of my favourite games of all time as well. Always great to have an excuse for that. So from X to Blue Sky next, and I must admit, it is a social platform upon which I feel much more at home. My primary social media platform of choice. I also do a bit of Instagram and a bit of Mastodon as well from time to time. So if you want to follow me on any of those, I suppose I should take this opportunity to give a bit of a shout out to the links down in the description. And yeah, you're more than welcome to come and follow me. But of course, the platform itself isn't really of interest in this story. It's not really relevant. What is relevant is that this is an homage to a much loved retro computing platform of the past, and I know a lot of you out there are big fans of this platform as well. An 8-bit computing legend. And this is an Easter egg that has come up in the latest LEGO Batman game as well. So if you're a LEGO fan, as I most certainly am, or indeed a Batman fan, this should be of interest to any of you out there. So this is the post by Cabell Sassa over on Blue Sky. Of course, this will be linked down below so you can watch the video for yourself. It's a proper video. It has commentary and explanation and everything else as well. And it's only 36 seconds long. So well done, Cabell. I think it's well worth a watch. But let's go over this together. If you want to keep the surprise for yourself and check out the link down in the description, then please do. But for those of you who just want to know what this is about, let's check it out now. So this is, as mentioned, the latest LEGO Batman game. And as we can see, we have Batman himself in his LEGO Bat Cave. And this is a mission where you need to use the LEGO Bat computer to do some research for something, some analysis for some mission or other. And as we can see, when the computer boots up, we've got some basic code that's displayed on the boot screen, which is labelled as Bat Basic, as you might expect. But evidently, Cabell has spotted, as have quite a few other people on the internet, I will say, that this looks very much like Commodore 64 BASIC. And he's done what you would expect anyone in their right mind to do in the situation. And he has typed all of this out painstakingly into a Commodore 64 emulator to see what it does. I imagine he doesn't actually type this fast. I guess this footage has been sped up. This has been independently confirmed by some other people out there as well. So, getting to the crux of the story, what does the code featured in LEGO Batman actually do on a real Commodore 64? Or on an emulator in this case. Well, let's take a look. So when actually running this basic code, as you can see, we get this yellow Batman symbol that pops up on the screen and bounces around the screen. And what a cool inclusion in a modern game. Actual working Commodore 64 code that people out there, of course, have taken the effort to actually go and type into their own machines and their own emulators to find out what it does. This is a brilliant Easter egg, I will say. And some of the discussion around this, I have seen some people mention that this is actually a known existing Commodore 64 BASIC example that actually came with the machine for teaching people BASIC. As we got back in the day, used to get quite weighty manuals with those machines back in the day, if you remember, with full-blown BASIC tutorials and learning courses in them. So we could all learn BASIC and make games in our bedrooms and become millionaires. And so apparently this is based on a known example where I think it was a balloon graphic appears on the screen and bounces around. And what the developers here have done is that they've actually taken the effort to alter the code to make it draw the bat symbol instead. And that's the story behind that. But really cool Easter egg. Not something you see much of in modern games, or at least they don't seem to come up on my radar very often. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps there are other examples like this out there. But such a nerdy thing. I mean, it's Lego. It's Batman, and it's also the Commodore 64. I mean, it's like a holy trinity of a nerd greatness. What a cool thing to see. Another momentous nerdy coming together for my next story. And I do apologise for the building work that's happening in the warehouse right behind this wall. Hopefully that's not coming through on the microphone, but it is quite noisy. But the show must go on. Yeah, another momentous coming together for my next story, if indeed we did want a tenuous link to the previous story, not that we need one. And this one is all about MiSTer, that wonderful FPGA or Field Programmable Gate Array chip-based platform, which allows us to recreate the logic of those original chips that powered those original computers and consoles back in the day. And we can do that at a one-to-one level using the FPGA and at a hardware level, which of course makes it by far the most accurate way to run those old games and bits of software from the past, which I think is very important to note. And I know it's something I always point out, but it's always really fascinated me. And if you don't have a MiSTer, you really should look into it, because it is by far the best way to play all of those old games. But yeah, as I said, this is a coming together, and it's a coming together of two things that I happen to be rather passionate about. Because the other thing is the Atari Jaguar, that failed Atari console from 1992. One of the early 3D consoles, of course, that era that the MiSTer does kind of support up to a point. It does support that first generation of 3D consoles like the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, the N64. We don't have PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast and that kind of second generation because the FPGA chip just isn't quite complex enough to handle those. We do need perhaps a next generation of FPGA-based platform to make that leap. But for now, certainly plenty of stuff to explore and another console to be added to that roster. And a very historically interesting one too, I will say. Although I am biased because I do love the Jag. Anyway, there's a video here demonstrating the latest release of that core. So we'll dive straight into this. And we'll just have a look at some footage of Mortal Kombat running on this. Now, apparently this is a new port of Mortal Kombat. But there was actually a rather excellent port of Mortal Kombat on the Jag back in the day as a retail game as well. And this core does indeed run that, as per the entire retail catalogue and all of the homebrew and everything else available for the Jaguar. This core is now mature. It is now a production release, and you can now go and get it via the standard update process on your MiSTer setup, which is a huge milestone because the Jaguar is a really difficult console to emulate. It's one that's only very, very recently got a proper software emulator in the form of Big PMU. And there have been previous attempts at creating a MiSTer core for the Jag, which have kind of fizzled out. And this is kind of a developer who's picked this up and finally decided to tackle this head on. As I previously reported, the name of the developer, I should give them full credit, is Taurus. So you've got the code here over on GitHub, but you don't need to go to GitHub because you can download it via the normal update process. So this video from LS Dowdle is a rather comprehensive demonstration of various games running on here, and I won't show all of these to you in this video, of course. But we do have Rayman, which I think is a really brilliant port of course, that's a much known and loved, very high quality platformer from back in the day. Quite rightly so, a really excellent game. I love the Jaguar port of it. I think it's great. I think it is one of the best ways to experience Rayman, so the Jag does have that going for it. Some of the other games demoed here, and I am skipping over quite a lot here. We've got some Atari ST ports, some kind of more modern homebrew Atari ST ports. Of course, the Jag and the ST do use the same CPU, the Motorola 68000, so that's quite a popular way of getting games onto the Jag. But I also wanted to show this just before we talk in a bit more detail about this. So this is Alien versus Predator. Now the Jag also, in addition to some great ports, a rather large collection of rather terrible games, which perhaps are unfortunately do overshadow some of the good things that the Jag had to offer. It did indeed have a few platform exclusives, and in this case, the killer app for the Jag, which was AVP. A really, really excellent, top-notch first-person shooter for its day, and one that has gone down in history as one of the greatest, and quite rightly so. You can play as the alien, you can play as the marine, and indeed you can play as the predator. 3 different stories, 3 different campaigns, which was a really big thing back when this game was released, and it looks great, sounds great. Well worth experiencing, if nothing else. If you've never owned a Jag and never checked it out, but you do have a MiSTer, now is your opportunity to finally play Alien vs Predator and see what the fuss is all about. Of course, there's also Tempest 2000, the other platform exclusive that people talk about, not demoed in this video, but indeed does also run absolutely perfectly on this core. Now, the description, I will say here from LS Dowdle, who, as far as I can see, isn't involved with the development of the core, just a fan wanting to show it off to the world. This description is rather good and rather comprehensive, so we'll give him credit where it's due, and we'll read a little bit of this. This week, the Atari Jaguar core hit a milestone. It went from in development to production and is available to everyone via the normal MiSTer FPGA update process. During the course of this video, I tried to show how well the core works. It's running the single RAM version of the core, which generally works great, but the dual RAM version of the core is preferred as it is cycle accurate. The single RAM version comes really darn close to cycle accurate. So the MiSTer system itself has external RAM add-ons that you can plug into it. And indeed, one of the options is a dual RAM add-on. In the early days of the Sega Saturn core development, you needed the dual RAM, and it's to do with memory bandwidth rather than the actual quantity of the RAM. But then they refined that core to the point where the dual RAM was no longer a requirement. I don't know if the Jaguar core is going to go that way as well. Of course, as they kind of refine and optimize it, it may well be that they drop the requirement. I say requirement, apparently it still runs great with the single RAM, but yeah, for the cycle perfect emulation, you do need the dual RAM, and this video does kind of point that out. But just a little caveat there for people perhaps like me who have the MiSTer multi-system, which only has the single RAM. It's going to run great, but it's not going to be 100% cycle accurate. Will you see the difference when you're actually playing the games? I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to try it out for myself. Anyway, I show the core can load ROM files of regular game cartridges, JAG CD games in .cdi format. It can play back audio CDs using the Virtual Light Machine, which was the built-in music visualizer with the Jaguar CD add-on. And it also does CD plus G playback in CDI format. So those are those graphic CDs, which we used for karaoke and stuff back in the day. Evidently, people sometimes used to run those on their Jaguar CD for some reason. That's not a use case that I've ever heard of, but certainly very welcome. It can do homebrew games, aftermarket games, and the Atari ST ported games that I mentioned before. It has cheats available, although thus far not a lot of cheats have been gathered up and added. More should be added over time. And there's also a note here about BIOSes. So there are third-party BIOSes available for the Jag, for emulators, and indeed for this MiSTer core. You can use one of those with it, and apparently the developers have made alternative BIOS builds available for this core. But you can run the original BIOS as well. The new BIOS adds some extra functionality and some tweaks and things, and potentially skirts around some potential copyright issues, maybe. Although I will say I think the Jag was all open sourced at one point. But yeah, also supports the MemTrack, which is the save cartridge, the save game cartridge for the Jag CD as well, which is a very useful thing to have if you are checking out those Jaguar CD games. So that is that. A really big milestone in the MiSTer world and the Atari Jaguar world. It's becoming increasingly rare that we get a new production-ready, super shiny, brand new core for the MiSTer. It's a very mature platform. Very actively developed, but a lot of those developments are in the area of ongoing improvements and refinements to existing cores. So a whole new production-ready, finished, polished, final core for a console that previously we haven't had proper support for on the MiSTer. Very much something to make a song and dance about, and all credit goes to the developer, who I believe is Taurus, based on this GitHub repo. But you don't need to check out the GitHub repo to enjoy the new Atari Jaguar core, because, as mentioned, you can get it from the standard update all script, as per all of the other MiSTer cores. You have to load up the ROMs yourself, but hopefully, if you are a MiSTer owner, you already know how to do that. And I'm not going to talk about it here. I will say, actually, one of the side effects of this medication is dehydration, and it's something that I had to learn to deal with over the first few days. Stuff like dry mouth and kind of very minor headaches and things, and I found that I just had to drink an awful lot of water, and that pretty much solved that problem. But sitting here talking endlessly non-stop, it's something that I've had to be very wary of, so that's an interesting observation. Anyway, back to the stories, and I'm also conscious of the fact that I have quite a lot of stuff to cover, so let's get on with this. And this next story is also Atari adjacent, Atari related, to do with one of their subsidiaries, one that I am a big fan of indeed, and one that I have talked about quite a bit in the past. Now, I'm not sure whether this specific release will be of interest to all of my audience, but I'm sure there are some of you out there who will be very excited to hear about this. It is quite interesting. So, yeah, this is Digital Eclipse, which are known for stuff like the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection and some other really great game collections. They did the Llama Soft one as well, and also some other collections and releases and things. And they have they've picked a rather interesting franchise here that's, hey, fair enough. It's great to see it represented and being preserved for all the world to enjoy. So, yeah, this is a story over on gamespress.com. And this is Digital Eclipse and Atari bringing Barbie Rewind to a new generation. This is a collection of Barbie games from over the years, which have been packaged up rather nicely, given the Digital Eclipse treatment, and made available for PC and consoles for pre-order. So, yeah, if you're a Barbie fan and you want to enjoy all of the Barbie games that have been released over the years, or indeed someone in your family, someone in your life is a Barbie fan, this is great news. Interesting stuff. Fabulous new Barbie Dreamhouse game, plus a collection of 16 Barbie games from the Y2K era, are available for pre-order on PC and consoles today. Digital Eclipse and Atari today announced Barbie Rewind, a game that intertwines a brand new Barbie Dreamhouse design game with 16 classic Barbie games from the Y2K era. Barbie Rewind will launch later this year on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, PC, Nintendo Switch, and the Switch 2. There's a standard edition physical version for the PS5 and the Switch, a deluxe physical edition for the Switch, and you can pre-order it today. So, yeah, we've got... so the new game, the Dreamhouse game, allows you to design your own Barbie Dreamhouse, apparently. I've never played any of the Barbie games, so I don't know what that's all about, but sounds fun, creative, interesting. You can style each room with a fabulous collection of furniture, decor and accessories, inspired by real Barbie playsets released over the past 65 plus years. And yeah, you can play mini games from the 90s and the 2000s, and that actually allows you to unlock items in the new game as well, which is quite an interesting twist, I think. I actually quite like that angle to it. I think that's very cleverly done. The 16 classic Barbie games include such favourites as Barbie Pet Rescue and Barbie Horse Adventures Blue Ribbon Race, and they have been enhanced to be accessible on today's consoles, as of course you will expect from Digital Eclipse. Pre-orders available. There's a quote here from Mike Micker, who's the studio head at Digital Eclipse. We're excited to bring a new Barbie Dreamhouse game and this wonderful collection of historic titles to a new generation of players. Barbie Rewind celebrates Barbie's contributions to 65 plus years of fashion, decor and more through the unique lens of video games, connecting with longtime fans and modern audiences with an unmistakable pink charm. Got the 16 classic games, we've got creative expression, design your own dream house, all of that stuff. You've got the quest to unlock those items, and you have an exclusive digital lookbook, which is quite an interesting museum of history of Barbie-related stuff, of course. Again, something that Digital Eclipse have done very well in the past with the Atari historical items and the Llama Soft stuff, to name but a few. Of course, more details here, more screenshots and more information from Atari, Mattel and Digital Eclipse themselves. But I thought that was a noteworthy release and just worthy of a very quick mention. So yeah, if you're interested in Barbie, checking out the new Dreamhouse game and 16 historic Barbie games from the 90s and the 2000s, and the way that they've tied it all together with all that historical documentation and information too, you can go and pre-order that on the link, which you will find down below in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or indeed in the show notes if you're listening on your podcast app of choice, along with links to all of my other stories from this week's Ramble. Another game preservation story next, and one that approaches it from a very different angle, I must say, which is very interesting. Now, I personally think it's very important that these games are preserved for future generations, not just because they're fun to play and games were made to be played, and as the older platforms become obsolete, of course, the games kind of end up trapped on those old platforms, and stuff like emulation and MiSTer and indeed these re-releases and remasters allow us to kind of free them from the shackles of their original platform and allow a whole new audience to enjoy them. But yeah, it's not just playing the games and enjoying them that's important, but also learning from them, seeing how they've developed over the years and getting a picture of how the games industry has grown into the biggest entertainment industry in the world. A very important part of our cultural history. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but the fact that this uses a very different approach, which I am a huge supporter of and which I have talked about in the past, does make it worthy of a bit of a spotlight as kind of a complementary story to my previous one about the release of those Barbie games. So this isn't an official thing. This is an unofficial community thing, and I think that makes it all the more interesting. Certainly the process by which they've gone about this. So this is a story on time extension, and it's to do with recompilation, which I have talked about in the past, where we take a release of a game, a final finished version of the game that runs on a specific console, and we can turn it back into source code, into actual code, which we can then edit. So we can add new features, we can add support for modern hardware, that kind of thing, even support for completely different platforms, which the game was never intended to run on in the first place, and then recompile it into an actual working game. And it's so important. It's something that's really kind of come into its own in recent years. We've had efforts on the N64, specifically, I've talked about quite a bit in the past. But this is to do with Xbox Live Arcade. So the Xbox, starting with the original Xbox, and I did do a video about this years ago, but it kind of came into its own on the 360, and it's that online marketplace that Microsoft provided that allowed people to download kind of smaller games and ports and of games from other platforms from the past, homebrew games, that kind of stuff. I was a huge fan of Xbox Live Arcade back when I had my 360. And there indeed are some real gems on there. So, this story by Damien McFerrin, a native port of PC port of XBLA Daytona USA is here, if you're willing to do some legwork. Gentlemen, head to GitHub. Very good. He's always good with the taglines, isn't he, Damien? We could soon see a host of native ports of the 2011 XBLA version of Daytona USA in the near future, thanks to a static recompilation project created by Subarashis. Let's go with that. No public releases have been made available yet, so you'll have to follow the lengthy build process yourself to create a PC version, but we can expect a ready-to-use build to appear fairly soon. The project leverages the RexGlue recompilation tool, which you can read more about here. So, this isn't a one-off. There is indeed a tool available that will allow all of those old Xbox Live Arcade games to be to potentially have their own static recomp ports to the PC. Fantastic. RexGlue has been used in a series of recompilation projects, including Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Great game, that. The original version of Daytona USA launched in arcades in 1994 and has since become one of the most popular coin-ops of all time. A sequel would follow 3 years later, and ports and spin-offs appeared on the Saturn and the Dreamcast. One of the killer apps for the Saturn, I will say, back in those days, if you wanted to play the most accurate arcade version of Daytona USA at home, you had to have a Saturn. And again, if you have a MiSTer and the Saturn core, well worth checking out. But over the years, Sega has updated the game for arcades, with the most recent outing coming in 2025. And in 2024, the UK newspaper The Guardian decided that Daytona USA was Sega's greatest arcade game. I can't say I can really argue with that, to be honest. I mean, there are some other really strong contenders as well, but why not? I wouldn't question anyone for coming to that conclusion. Really, really fantastic, iconic game. But as we can see here, I mean, look at this running. There's a video here from Video Game Esoterica, which is embedded in this time extension story. And I mean, look at this. The Daytona USA was, it was really kind of groundbreaking in the day because it was just so fast. It was, it ran at 60 FPS natively on that arcade hardware. The graphics, the 3D graphics, some really kind of pioneering 3D rendering techniques used in this game that put it really above and beyond all of the other arcade races that were out at the time. Absolutely banging soundtrack. The gameplay was super tight, the racing, the action. I can't sing its praises highly enough. I probably don't need to tell you how great Daytona USA is. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. But the Xbox Live Arcade port was known for being particularly noteworthy for being very, very authentic to the original, for its performance, its super smooth gameplay, and its it's a kind of upscaled graphics for those for that modern platform. So to be able to enjoy it again natively and easily on the PC is a thing to be celebrated. Of course, as the story mentions, you do need to actually compile it yourself at the moment, but very shortly there should be some pre-compiled releases that you should be able to just go out and download yourself, whether you need to find the original assets, graphics assets and stuff, as is often the case with this. I'm not quite sure. But, look at this. It's got a proper full-on modern menu system, which I guess would have come from that XBLA release. We've got the 3 different courses in here. We've got the automatic and manual options. We've got everything you'd expect from Daytona USA. So yeah, a static recomp project, the XBLA port, highly lauded at the time, of a rather excellent arcade racer, now available for modern PCs. Some more great news for Sega fans next, and specifically perhaps those of us who owned a Dreamcast back in the day and got to enjoy one of the standout titles on that console. Or perhaps you didn't own one and missed out on that game, perhaps specifically if you are a big Resident Evil fan, because this next story is all about Resident Evil Code Veronica, which was released on the Dreamcast in the year 2000. It was a spin-off of the kind of mainline Resident Evil series, and kind of stands out as one of the better releases on the Dreamcast. Not that it was short of those. It was a very high-quality console with some very, very high-quality games. Perhaps unlike the Jaguar, which we talked about earlier in this ramble. But anyway, if you are a fan of Resident Evil, or indeed Code Veronica, or wanted to check it out at some point, this story's for you. IGN.com, story by Tom Phillips, and Capcom has revealed a Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, just named Resident Evil Veronica, delighting fans of the franchise watching this year's Summer Game Fest live stream. I'm going to hit play on this video, so those of you watching this on YouTube have something to look at while I read this. Footage, let's skip ahead a little bit, there we go. Rather nice graphics in this game, I will say as well. They've done an absolutely splendid job with this, but going back to Tom's story on IGN, footage showed an unnamed female character being shown around a Parisian apartment, though the clue here is she's the sister of someone else here on a secret mission. The footage concludes with the reveal that this is none other than Claire Redfield, the sister of Chris, and this is a reimagined take on the classic Code Veronica story. Veronica will launch in 2027 for Nintendo Switch 2, PC, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series console. So while great news for Resident Evil fans, the announcement does not come as too much of a surprise. Previous reporting had pinned a Code Veronica remake for a 2027 release and tipped its reveal as taking place this year following the launch of Resident Evil Requiem. IGN previously verified that a new version of the game is indeed in development, alongside a further off Resident Evil 0 remake as well. Meanwhile, MP1ST has claimed that the game has been penciled in with a Q1 2027 launch window, and of course the remake follows Capcom's previous new versions of Resident Evil 2, 3 and 4. Code Veronica originally launched in 2000 for the Dreamcast. It's not a mainline numbered entry in the series, but it remains beloved by fans and considered a core part of the franchise's story. Its narrative takes place around the same time as Resident Evil 3, but instead features Claire and Chris Redfield on a remote prison island and then in Antarctica. And yes, fan favourite baddie Wesker is also involved. So IGN are also pointing here to their roundup of everything that has been announced during the Summer Game Fest 2026, so do go and check that out. I'll link to this story down below so you can watch this video and perhaps follow through to that link and see the other releases. But yeah, great news for Sega fans, great news for Resident Evil fans, and great news for Dreamcast fans as well. Wonderful stuff. Cuphead was, of course, a notoriously brutally difficult and also notoriously beautiful game released back in 2017 by Studio MDHR, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It was a run-and-gun platformer done in a rather interesting and unique 1950s animation style, all hand-drawn, had some really nice kind of vintage visual effects as well on the game, and also a really brilliantly designed game in its own right as well. Those run and gun sections and some of those boss battles, which were kind of really creative and really original, if not absolutely punishingly difficult. And a game that I never completed, although that's perhaps not surprising because I am notoriously bad at games. But out of the blue, seemingly now, 9 years later, Yeah, that's right. It is 9 years since Cuphead was originally released. We have an announcement from Studio MDHR, which has dropped on YouTube. Now, I will show a bit of this, but this isn't kind of the main crux of this story, believe it or not, because the video is great, as you might expect from that studio. We've got this Cuphead-styled newsreader character, an actual physical puppet that they've put together. The script is funny, it's entertaining. It's only 2 minutes long, this video. It is literally just an announcement. There's no kind of gameplay footage of this new Cuphead game in here. And also, no kind of information about the gameplay or anything else like that. But what is of interest, particularly to this audience, and what came completely out of the blue at the end of this announcement, was another spin-off that they are working on. And I'm just going to show a little bit of this for our video viewers. This is Mighty Cuphead Adventure, and it's an 8-bit game in the Cuphead unit. Well, it is a Cuphead game, but it is, like I say, not an 8-bit styled game. It is an 8-bit game because this has been written in assembly language for the Sega Master System. That's, of course, 8-bit Sega console from the 1980s, although it is also getting native releases on modern platforms as well. Completely out of the blue. I don't think anyone saw this coming, but the way that they've put this together is absolutely brilliant. So, we've got this. All the marketing and stuff around this is very, very authentic to that original kind of 1980s, game marketing. And the game itself just looks absolutely stunning, as you would expect from this studio. So now in development at Studio MDHR, it's Mighty Cuphead Adventure. That's right, this is a brand new riveting Cuphead video game that will bring the most advanced 8-bit action platforming to life on your television in 32 dazzling colours. Programmed in assembly language, Mighty Cuphead Adventure is designed with the precise, authentic specifications of the Sega Master System home gaming console. While the game will still be compatible with modern consoles and personal computers, those who want a true blast from the past can experience it on a physical cartridge for the Sega Master System home gaming console. They just don't make them like they used to. Until we decided to. Mighty Cuphead Adventure, currently in development, so we don't have a release date announced for this yet. We do have some gameplay footage, so evidently they are at least some way along with it. But the exciting news here is that this is getting a physical cartridge release on the Master System. I guess they're an indie studio, but they are pretty much a household name now, as is Cuphead. Massively, massively successful game. Very unusual to see a release like this. And the attention to detail, as you will expect from Studio MDHR, is absolutely spot on. So I'm going to enjoy following along with the development of this. Hopefully this won't be the last that you hear about Mighty Cuphead Adventure here on Reese Rambles. And very, very, very much looking forward to seeing how this one comes together. Big news this week from a game studio which should hopefully need no introduction to this audience. They are indeed another one of those subsidiaries of Atari nowadays, although they were very successful in their own right before they were recently acquired by Atari. I say recently, I think it was about 2 years ago. And of particular interest to me as well, because I am a big fan of all of those 90s first-person shooters. Games like Doom, of course, as I've mentioned, and indeed they did do an excellent remaster of Doom. But at the minute, I've been playing Heretic, which was also released by this studio. I've been playing my way through that for quite a while now on my PC in my kind of spare time. They've also done Dark Forces. I loved Dark Forces back in the day, and their remaster really did do it justice. A really excellent game, worth checking out. And all sorts of other games. I mean, they've done Quake, they've done Quake 2. I can't even reel them all off the top of my head. But of course, the studio that I am talking about is Nightdive Studios. And they have announced one of their most anticipated titles to date this week. If you've missed this somehow, you're probably living under a rock, but hey, we have busy lives and things, so I thought I would bring this to everyone's attention because this is a game that I've never played, unlike a lot of the other games that they've released, in fact, pretty much all of the other games that they've released, but it is a game that I have been dying to play since it first came out because this is an absolutely legendary release from back in the day. I watched a really good Civ 11 video on this a few years ago, and I've been wanting to check it out ever since, but I've also been following the rumours that Nightdive have been working on this and kind of holding off, waiting to play their kind of slightly more polished modern version. So, over on PCGamer.com, we see that, their next remaster is Thief. but should be really welcome news to those of us like me who have heard of this game. I think pretty much everyone's heard of it and have been holding off on checking it out, or indeed people who played it back in the day and really loved it and would like to experience it again on modern systems with a bit of modern polish. So, a story here by Joshua Wallens on PCGamer.com. Oh hell yes, Nightdive's next delicious remaster treat is Thief. Go away, pop-up. 4K moss arrows, just like I always dreamed. So we have a bit of a trailer here. Let's just show a bit of that from Nightdive Studios. It's a bit of a teaser, so we don't have too much gameplay experience, but we can see from the graphics here, as you would expect, running on their Kex engine, of course, their in-house game engine, which has proven itself time and time again to be a rather excellent platform for these remasters. Yeah, the game is looking great. Not that I expect any less from Nightdive. So, you know the saying, when God closes a door, he opens a window, then fires a rope arrow through it and steals everyone's antiques. I might not have gotten the Nightdive Deus Ex remaster I've long dreamt of. Indeed, I've also been dreaming of that. But we are getting the studio's remaster of Thief, as revealed at the PC Gaming Show. Allow me to be the first to express this sentiment in an official editorial capacity. Hell yeah. In the big 2026, there's no one I'd trust more to bring back Thief, the Dark Project, a bona fide classic, than Nightdive, which acquitted itself very well last year with a long-awaited remaster of System Shock 2. We only got some brief glimpses, which I suppose is appropriate during the game's PCGS reveal trailer, but I like what I see. Folks, much as it did with SS2, Nightdive looks like it's taken pains to preserve Thief's thiefness. There are no garishly up-res textures, no perversely bump-mapped guard models. It looks like the game I remember playing on a hulking Fujitsu in 1999, subtly tweaked to make sense on modern screens. And you can check it out on Steam. There we go. Go away, pop-up. My goodness. Anyway, a bit more information about this and about Thief, but they've just linked to the Steam page, so I guess we will follow through to this and see what information we have available on here. Now, the release date, as mentioned, is to be announced. We do have a little bit more gameplay on here, actually featured on this trailer on the Steam page, as well as some screenshots. So if you want to go and check out what the graphics look like, very tastefully modernised, as we again expect from Nightdive. So yeah, it's kind of a stealth. I wouldn't describe it as a first-person shooter like their other games, although it certainly does have some of those elements. Deus Ex, I think, is probably a fair comparison based on what I know about Thief. It's kind of a stealth, creepy aroundy. Creepy aroundy, is that a genre? I don't know. You know what I mean. 3D stealth game. And yeah, this one is set in a medieval setting, so you can sneak into people's houses and steal their stuff. You can kill people either blatantly out in the open or using various stealth techniques and weapons. And it is generally considered to be one of the greatest games of all time. So very welcome release coming very soon from Nightdive, and one that I shall be wishlisting and checking out just as soon as I can. And that, my dearest ramblers, brings me around rather neatly to my regular videos of the week section, wherein I feature videos that I have watched here on the old YouTubes in the past week that have entertained, educated, enlightened, or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Some of them are vintage and retro computing, technology and gaming related. Some of them aren't. Sometimes there's one and sometimes there is more than one. And I have a rather interesting selection of 3 for you here. I haven't really watched much retro YouTube in the past week. What I have been watching, I will just show you this because I think it's quite interesting, is a series called The Burrows on Netflix, which is... it centres around this retirement village in the middle of the desert, and there's some weird kind of paranormal goings on and stuff. I've seen mixed reviews of this, and I haven't actually finished watching it yet, although I will finish it over the weekend. But I've been enjoying it very much. It's been very much up my tree, and I think it's quite well put together. And I kind of really like the mystery aspect that kind of gets uncovered as the series goes along. I just thought it was quite interesting, and maybe a bit rare in this day and age to find something actually good on Netflix, particularly the way that Stranger Things ended. But anyway, that's The Burrows, but of course we're here to talk about YouTube videos, and the first one that I have for you is a follow-up to one of my videos of the week last week. So this is from MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer, and last week he released a video talking about the Neo Geo and the hardware, I'm not going to say limitations of that system, but the hardware design of that system that made it particularly difficult for people to port Doom to it, because it was very much designed as a 2D console. And I think he showed off a bit of a very basic 3D rendering engine. And then in the past week, a few people have taken that and they've run with it and they've built upon it. And we now actually have some stuff that is starting to quite closely resemble Doom on the Neo Geo. And yeah, this is actually quite remarkable to see, not just because of the technical achievement of it, but also because he put out this video lamenting the lack of a port of Doom to the Neo Geo, and the community have actually jumped on it and made it a reality, which is always really interesting to see. Yeah, when it happens with these kind of big-time influencers, it seems you can just put a request out there and then people will jump on the challenge and make it for you. I don't know. I'm perhaps not quite at that stage in my YouTube career yet. But yeah, we do have some promising early technical demos of something at least resembling Doom on the Neo Geo. Hopefully that's something that's going to continue to develop. But an interesting story, just taking a look at those from MVG. My next two videos are a bit silly, I will say. They're not really proper things, I guess, but I watched them and I thought they were quite entertaining, so I thought I would share them with you in what is otherwise a pretty light week as far as videos go. So I think you'll like these. This next one is Tickle Me Elmo going through a particle accelerator. Yes, these people have access to a particle accelerator and a radiation-hardened GoPro, so they decided to put Elmo through it. What horrible people. But yeah, I think this was posted over on my Discord, or maybe it came up as on my YouTube homepage for some reason. I have no idea. I'm not going to show you the video here. It's only 2 minutes long, and poor old Elmo does suffer as a result of the extreme levels of radiation to which he is subjected in this video. So yeah, quite a traumatic video for Elmo fans, I guess, but interesting to see the effects of that radiation on electronic gadgets. I suppose there's some educational value in that. And thirdly and finally, I have a video here, which is a compilation. If you're a fan of Technology Connections, and I very much am, there's a thing that Alec does in a lot of his videos where to demo something, he will actually buy two of something, and he'll say, through the magic of buying two of them, and he'll show something kind of complete and something another example that he has torn down to demonstrate how it works. And it's a bit of a meme on his channel, and what somebody's done has collected all of the examples, or at least a lot of the examples of this over the years, and the different variations that he has done on that theme, and put them together in one fun video. And this really made me smile, because I love him. I think he's one of the big names on YouTube, one of the kind of longest running channels, and one of the highest quality, consistently high quality channels over the years, covering all aspects of technology stuff, be that modern technology or older technology. And it's just, this is just kind of a bit of a fun thing for people who enjoy his channel. So yeah, if you want to see 3 minutes of Technology Connections saying through the magic of buying two of them, and also if you want to see all the things that he's bought two of over the years and destroyed one of, there you go. That's a rather entertaining video. So to round them up, as I do, we've got MVG with the follow-up to his Neo Geo video showing some quite promising progress on ports of Doom to that console. We have Tickle Me Elmo going through a particle accelerator, and we have Technology Connections buying two of many things. And they're my videos of the week. You'll find those linked down below if you're watching this on YouTube in the description, or indeed if you are listening to this on your podcast app of choice, you'll find this all the links to these and all my other stories in the show notes that should be accessible from that app. Now, this is the point where I've started to include a bit of a kind of a short thing, a bit of a short story at the end of each ramble, just because, you know, they were starting to tail off and stuff, and they didn't really have much structure at the end, and that's something that I consciously wanted to try to improve. So I've started trying to include kind of one last thing, and finally, as they do on the local news, like that. But this week, my Discord has been abuzz with activity of people posting stories and things, and there's so much stuff that I wanted to talk about in this week's ramble that I just haven't had time to fit in. So, for this week, just as kind of a follow-on from my videos of the week, as that was perhaps a little bit lighter, I'm going to talk about all of the stories that have been posted that I haven't talked about yet. Some of them have some substance, some of them are just quite interesting things to check out. They will all be linked down below, so if you do want to know any more about them, please do go and check out those links. So, The first thing is Electron Shepherd is working on a HDMI adapter for the Sega Dreamcast. Of course, we've seen some internal HDMI mods for the Dreamcast. They are quite involved. They do involve some fine soldering and stuff. And there are indeed some external converters and things as well. But Electron Shepherd, big name in this kind of community. And this is just a bit of a teaser. They have posted an image of a 3D printed enclosure. But indeed, this is an HDMI adapter for the Dreamcast. So hopefully we'll get some more news on this soon. I love the Dreamcast, as you may know, and always good to have solutions to connect these old consoles to modern displays. The next one is someone has posted a CRT rental service based in London, I believe. So if you want to rent, I think this is aimed more at the kind of broadcast industry and people wanting to use them as props and things. But if you are interested in renting a Sony PVM or a BVM or a similar broadcast monitor, CRT, or indeed a Bang & Olufsen BioVision MX4000, you can go to this website and you can enter your rental period and get a price for that. So there we go. I haven't been through and checked out any of the prices on these. I just haven't had time. But it looks like you can specify how long you want to rent it for, and they will give you a quote. So maybe if you want to host a retro gaming event and you don't own enough CRTs or kind of enough decent quality CRTs for something like that, might be actually potentially quite a useful service. So that's kitto.rent, link down below. We also have here someone loading games to a Sega Genesis, or indeed the Dreamcast in Japan and Europe. Loading games to that using a vinyl turntable. So actually playing games from vinyl. And they've put together an interface to actually load games using a Pi Pico from audio encoded versions of those games. Of course, we had games on cassette for those 8-bit platforms and things, but never for the Mega Drive. That was always a cartridge-based console. So yeah, a video here about games on vinyl on tomshardware.com, and quite a clever hardware project by the looks of it. So unfortunately, I haven't had more time to have a look into that, but I certainly will do after recording. We have the first major release of the Superstation. Of course, that is the FPGA-based console from Taki Udon, based on the original Sony PS1. And yeah, this is the console mode. So he's doubled the performance in this latest release. So if you are one of the people out there who are lucky enough to own a Superstation 1, please do check out this latest update, because it will be a big improvement to your quality of life with said console. We have another story here. This is a hobby operating system for vintage 32-bit PCs called Gentle OS. This is something I really do want to take a look at. A hobby operating system for vintage 32-bit PCs. It's a simple platform for tinkering with retro hardware and running graphical interactive apps on bare metal. Requires a 386, 4 meg of RAM and a VGA display, capable of 640 by 480 by 16. So, yeah, and it is, I believe, open source as well. Yeah, GPL2 license. So, also, perhaps of interest to those looking to tinker and find out how these operating systems work. A really nice, fairly basic modern example of an operating system for this older hardware. We have a new Spyro game that has been announced for the Xbox, which, of course, a much-loved game series, Spyro the Dragon, over the years, and always great to see a new entry in this series. This was posted by Naoki, our native dragon, so, of course, I had to give a shout-out. One of my favourite people, and also a fellow YouTuber, although I believe not releasing anything for a while yet. Not that I'm in a position to comment on that. But yeah, new Spyro game, and this is part of the kind of Xbox 25th anniversary celebrations that are going on at the moment. And of course, the other noteworthy thing, at least to me, is that they've done a green transparent Xbox Series X as well. So that is going to be coming out soon. If you remember the OG Xbox, they did the green Halo edition of that. Really popular at the time, really, really cool looking console. And it's so cool to see them kind of doing a bit of a tribute to that with the modern Xbox Series X. So I'll be looking forward to seeing some of those. There's also the matching green controller as well. Really nice for retro Xbox fans such as myself. So I do need to do a bit more coverage on the 25th anniversary celebrations. I'll make a note of that for next week. We have the port of Wolfenstein 3D to the Atari Lynx. Wolf 3D, of course, it was ported to the Atari STE a few years back. A really, really great native port running on native unaccelerated Atari STE hardware. And it seems now someone has ported that to the Lynx as well. The Lynx was a really, really capable bit of hardware designed by some ex-Amiga people back in the day. And yeah, it was picked up by Atari. Not originally developed in-house by Atari, but it was picked up by Atari. I did do a video on that, actually, at one point. And yeah, it's one of those kind of mythical, kind of legendary consoles that's much loved, has a really great homebrew scene around it. And great to see such a kind of capable and a really well done port of what is actually quite an advanced 3D game that really pushes the limits of the hardware. So that's always great to see. And finally, in this little roundup, Apidia, I believe that's how you pronounce it, Apidia, which was like a horizontal shooter game that was bee based, like bee and insect and nature based, that was really big on the Amiga back in the day. And there's actually kind of a modern remake, re-release. We've got a soundtrack by Chris Hulsbeck, of course, a really big name in the gaming soundtrack world. And yeah, it's a remake where you can essentially switch between modern graphics and sound and the original graphics and sound kind of seamlessly. So yeah, much loved game on the Amiga, very kind of technically impressive game on the Amiga, loads and loads of stuff going on, one of these bullet hell type shooters, really push the hardware to its limits. And there's a new version of it coming out, which is always great to see. I always love preservation, remakes, that kind of thing, as you've probably seen. But that's all I have for this week's Ramble, and I have to be at my CrossFit class in 20 minutes' time. Thankfully, it's only 2 minutes down the road, so that's all I've got for you for this week's Ramble. Really, really meaty one this week with absolutely loads of content, and I think it's been a huge success, actually. Yeah, shout out to the Elvans and the ADHD assessment and diagnosis process, I guess. Now, hopefully that means I'm going to be able to get things back on track with my main channel videos as well, which is something that I've been dearly wanting to do and really trying to push myself to do. We'll be very honest and open about that with all of you, because I know a lot of you are kind of missing my main channel output, as am I. So, yeah, hopefully this will be a step in starting to get stuff together in my life. Anyway, that's all I have, as mentioned, for this week. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I need to get going now. I will, of course, get this edited this evening and uploaded, ready for its regular release at 2 minutes to midnight, both on YouTube, my second channel, youtube.com/ReesRambles, and also the podcasting platforms. And yeah, every Friday, 2 minutes to midnight, UK time. Thanks again. If you want to join us over on the Discord, there is a link to do that down in the description, as well as links to all of the other stories and indeed videos of the week featured in this week's Ramble. That's all I've got. Goodbye.